Banks are failing. They are failing right and left in the United States and in Europe, and it's just the beginning. My name is Vitaly and I am a PhD economist. I am a boring mainstream economist. And in this video, I'll tell you a few facts that should be obvious, but the media ignores them. So, the banking panic of 2023, what does it mean and what's next?
The Silicon Valley Bank collapsed on March 10.
And within a few days, other banks joined the snowfall of failing banks. First Republic banks, Signature Bank, and Silvergate. Is it just me, or nobody heard about those banks before? Which makes you wonder if a failure of a few obscure banks put the whole system on the verge of a collapse. Is the US financial system this weak? Is the US economy this tender?
That our banking system is safe.
Okay. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, almost immediately the United States Federal Reserve launched a new program, BTFP, Bank Term Funding Program, and traders renamed it into Buy the Pivot. Under this program, the United States Federal Reserve will be lending money to banks. It will be lending money against treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. Yes, the toxic mortgage-backed securities are back. It's the year 2008 all over again. So, the US Federal Reserve will be lending money against treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. And those securities will be valued at their face value. Now, it's so important that I'll repeat, those securities will be valued at their face value. Now, translation. The failed banks will dump losses on the US Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve will just print money to cover up losses of failed banks. When the Federal Reserve gives loans against securities at face value, it doesn't matter how many losses such a bank had, because all those losses will be forgiven, dumped on the US government.
Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed.
Those banks in distress, they made mistakes, they are suffering losses, and now they will be reimbursed, forgiven, and rewarded for their mistakes. It's a good time to be an American bank. If you do a good job, you win. If you do a horrible job, you win again. This program, the Buy the Pivot program, will last for 1 year, which means that the US Federal Reserve expects the financial crisis to last for 1 year. So much for optimism. And like a virus, the US financial meltdown spread into Europe. Hence the collapse of Credit Suisse. And Credit Suisse is no Silicon Valley bank. It's the second largest bank of Switzerland. It was the second largest bank in Switzerland.
Now its biggest rival, UBS, is taking it over.
And banking system of Switzerland becomes a monopoly. I live in Canada, and in Canada we only have 5 big banks, the big 5. So, Switzerland, 1 bank, Canada, 5 banks. It shows you the path the US banking system will likely take. Right now, there are over 4,000 banks in the States. Insane. So, from 4,000 to 105, it's a long, long road. Expect a lot of bankruptcies. This financial meltdown is just the beginning. Swiss banking has been the most reliable and safest banking in the world. So reliable that the super rich all over the world used it to hide money, to avoid taxes. Not anymore. Now, even Swiss banks are toxic.
That's how capitalism works.
The US dollar has this beautiful line in God we trust. I'm not so sure about God, but as a PhD economist, I am sure that we are supposed to trust banks. We are supposed to trust money. Our entire economies are based on your belief that your bank will not shut its doors tomorrow. Your belief that your money are not just colorful pieces of paper, that there is something behind it. And this belief, this trust is gone. We now know that there is high inflation, and high inflation means high interest rates. And high interest rates mean that banks are suffering losses, and banks are hiding those losses behind accounting. According to Stanford University, American banks accumulated $2.2 trillion in losses. $2.2 trillion. That's a staggering number. It's a ticking time bomb. The financial meltdown of 2023 makes us recall the financial meltdown of 2008. But in 2008, the crisis didn't stop at banking. It spread into the entire economy, where not only banks failed, but all businesses, right and left, were failing. That hasn't happened yet. So expect the financial meltdown of 2023 become an economic crash.
The crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again.
Okay, but it's not 2008 anymore. In 2008, the world was very united, interdependent, dominated by the United States. Not anymore. Starting in 2020, Western nations were cutting ties with non-Western countries. So by now, many economies are more independent, freer from the US dominance.
Let's say China.
The economies of China, Turkey, Russia, and India are much more independent, protected from the US financial crises. So, if you don't live in the West, good for you, your crisis will be much milder than the one in Europe or the US. But if you're like me, if you live in the West, we'll pay the price. We'll pay the price for how much money our governments printed in 2020. We'll pay the price for how they let inflation out of control in 2021 and 2022. We are going to pay dearly. And in this financial Armageddon, I wish you to stay strong, to stay resilient, and to stay tuned for more updates. I'll talk to you next time.